podcast show for business owners and managers who are passionate about developing people and growing a successful business. And now here's your host, Alistair Booth from the HR Booth.
Welcome back to the channel. In this episode, going to be discussing the importance of the probation review, but more importantly, the importance of regular feedback during the probationary period. So a couple of reasons for kind of bringing this conversation up. We work with a number of businesses and quite often we help them with recruitment. So we are not a recruitment agency, but what we can do with a lot of clients is help them with recruitment around, HR administration, recruitment administration, onboarding, placing the job advert, and ultimately saving them time and money. So recruitment is an additional service, but one of the things we've kind of noticed recently with some clients is that we've occasionally had feedback from candidates where we have helped them through the recruitment process and then get a position with our client. The successful candidate has then, made comments to us, whether it's on site or remotely, to say things like, have you had any feedback in terms of how I'm doing? And the reason for that is they've had no feedback from the client, so their employer. So we, would speak to the client and the feedback generally is really positive, but employers are missing their trick because they're not actually sharing that feedback with their new start. Recruitment is tough. It takes up a lot of time. It costs a lot of money, and in the current climate, good people are hard to find. So you need to kind of do what you can to retain them. In my experience, when someone starts a new job, if they're going to get cold feet, it tends to be quite early on in that start of that new employment period. So if you're not giving them regular feedback in terms of how they're doing and, checking in with them, you really are missing their trick, because if they're going to get cold feet, it's going to be during the early stages there. So that's going to end up costing you more money and more time and have an impact on, your business in terms of the service that you provide to your customers. Might impact on productivity, puts pressure on other colleagues in the business because you're potentially going to be a person down again, and it could ultimately impact on your reputation, because the perception is that you're always advertising to replace people who are leaving the business. So if you have kind of spent the time and effort to go through the recruitment process, don't wait to the probation period to give the new employee some feedback in terms of how they're doing. Do that early on. And we work with a lot of our existing clients, certainly some of the bigger clients, where we actually do a regular kind of check-in with new starters anyway. So that shouldn't replace what the line manager is doing, but from an HR perspective, we can do regular kind of check-ins, and we do that sometimes at 4, 8 and 12 weeks, just to check that there's no gaps in their development, no gaps in the onboarding process, and everything that they expected has been put in place. So we would do that in addition to the line manager feedback. So the line manager has to be given regular ongoing feedback on that, and that's really important during the probation period to be doing that. And again, another reason for this episode is that over the years, even when I was in house roles, and also since the HR booth has been in business, quite often when I see a member of staff going into a probation review, quite often that employee will say to me, "Wee bit nervous about the probation review," or "I've got my probation review coming up." Now that employee should not be feeling nervous about their probation period, because there shouldn't be any surprises in that probation review meeting. Everything you're going to say in that probation review meeting, you should have actually given that feedback to the team member already. So they shouldn't be going into that meeting kind of feeling nervous or unsure in terms of what feedback you're going to give them. There shouldn't be any surprises in the probation review meeting. You should have given that person that feedback on an ongoing basis. So that's really important, just to make sure that is something that you're doing. And the probation review period is there, for both parties. So it's there for you to make sure that the person is performing well, they've got a good attitude, conduct's good, their timekeeping and attendance is all good. And that probation review period allows you to assess that and then give some regular feedback on areas that they need to improve. And obviously, if there are areas that are not working out, then you can look to extend the probation period if need be, or if you feel that the employment relationship has run its course, then that probation review period is there to allow you to do that in a, what should be a kind of safe kind of manner and doing so. Now, the probation review period, the probation period should be in the employment contract, so there should be a clause in there. Typically, that might last 3 months. Sometimes it's 6 months. Any more than that, we probably wouldn't recommend it, but you might have occasions where you need to extend the probation review period for whatever reason. And again, that can only be done if you've provided regular feedback, ongoing support, and if there's still some concerns at the 6-month review or the 3-month review, and you want to extend that probation period, then you can do so. But it's just making sure that is in your employment contract. Now, it's not a legal requirement to have a probation period. And it doesn't kind of stand up in employment law. So there can be a situation where you might have passed someone's probation period, then a couple of months later, you might decide to end their employment. Now, potentially sends out a bit of a mixed message to the employee that when you signed off the probation period, there was no issues because you've perhaps not addressed them. And then a couple of months later, you've told them that you're ending their employment because you have got some concern. So it causes a little bit of an issue and a little bit of a headache. But providing there isn't any potential discrimination claim in amongst that, and they have got less than that 2-year service, which if you're doing it just after the probation period, then they will do, that there's probably little kind of risk around that in terms of an employment tribunal claim coming in. But obviously, if there is a protected characteristic under the Equalities Act, then that might be a fair reason for them to then obviously go ahead and raise an employment tribunal claim. So you should always seek advice before ending employment anyway, and kind of check that out. But obviously, if you're kind of just past the probation period, then as I say, a few weeks later decide to end their employment, then it doesn't look great from you as a business, as a line manager. Probably not going to do great for your reputation and the culture of the business. So you should really be using that probation period to have that opportunity for that conversation, because quite often we've seen people pass their probation period, then it's a matter of weeks later that the employer wants to exit a person for whatever reason. So the probation period is there to potentially safeguard the business, but also it's an opportunity for the new person coming in, and that person given an opportunity for them to see if it's the right business for them as well. So don't be surprised, and sometimes in a probation review meeting, that the employee might say to you, well, this isn't for me, and here's some reasons for that as well. So that is something, it's a two-way process. And what a lot of forward-thinking companies are actually doing is actually having the probation review meeting being a true two-way process. And what I mean by that is that the person that you're reviewing can also give you some candid feedback as a line manager and as an employer. So some forward-thinking employers are actually inviting that question and that open discussion to enhance their culture and the employee experience. So just something to kind of be aware of as you look to enhance that. But the key message for today is, if you've got a new member of the team, make sure that you're doing regular ongoing feedback during the probation period. When you get to the probation review meeting, make sure there isn't any surprises in that discussion. And if you have got some concerns, don't just pass their probation period either by default or by not having that difficult conversation. Give them the feedback. And obviously, if you do need to extend that probation period, make sure that you've given them some specific reasons as to why. There's a bit of an action plan in terms of what they need to do over that extended period to meet the requirements of the role, and then make sure you kind of follow up with them and put that into place. So hopefully that's been helpful. If you've got any questions on the probation review period itself, onboarding a new employee, the hiring process, or giving ongoing regular feedback to people, then please feel free to reach out. You can find us at the usual places, which is through our website, which is www.thehrbooth.co.uk, or you can visit me on email, which is info@thehrbooth.co.uk. Thanks for tuning into this episode, and we will be back again soon.